Alô, bom dia. Bom dia. Vamos dar início a este segundo dia do Fórum B-Smart, integrado na Semana B-Smart, aqui organizado pelo município de Vila Nova de Famalicão. É um dia mais dividido entre aqui a Fundação Cupertino de Miranda e depois mais tarde ali fora no espaço de demonstração e de experiência que está a ser montado, e teremos lá então a Ágora, onde teremos mais um painel interessantíssimo e mais duas apresentações. Este evento está a ser transmitido online e efetivamente foi promovido nas redes sociais durante vários dias. Tivemos várias inscrições, mas já sabemos como é que isto funciona nos eventos hoje em dia, especialmente em dias de calor. Acaba-se por ter outras prioridades, e não esqueçamos que estamos perto de São João, não é? A semana de São João, as coisas começam a aquecer e os treinos, abriu a época de treinos. Bom, tudo isto, felizmente não nos retira a qualidade dos oradores que também temos para hoje e dos painéis que temos para este período da manhã. E sem mais demoras, porque já estamos com 15 minutinhos de atraso, da praxe, vamos apresentar o nosso ilustre primeiro orador, e vou fazer a apresentação em português, mas a apresentação dele será em inglês, como é óbvio, nem mais nem menos que trata-se de Boyd Cohen. É um estratega urbano conceituado. Ele concentra-se em inovação urbana, empreendedorismo, cidades inteligentes e mobilidade urbana. É professor da EA, da Business School e da Universidade de Vic e cofundador da Sharing Accelerator de Barcelona, dedicado à aceleração de startups de economia compartilhada responsável. Ele é também o CEO, é a sua mais recente atividade, e cofundador da IOMOB. O seu trabalho nesta última startup leva-o a liderar uma equipa de especialistas em mobilidade e tecnologia, com o objetivo de implementar a primeira plataforma de mobilidade on-demand, Mobility as a Service, MaaS, do mundo para empresas com clientes na Europa, América do Norte e Ásia. Boyd, it's a great pleasure to have you here with us. Please join us on stage. It's going to be I'm very curious to see which circle of how is your work going on with IOMOV, your latest project. Welcome.
Thank you, Víctor. Hola. Puedo hablar en castellano, pero portugués no mucho. Portuñol, no sé. But I guess I'll go English, unless everyone prefers Spanish, which sometimes happens in Portugal. Last time I was with Vitor here in Portugal was 9 years ago in Bragança, I think. And that was before I started IMOB. I've been in smart cities for a very long time. And what's that? Yeah, it's not mine. I can try to present this, but it's in Portuguese and it's not my content, but I'll figure it out. While we're waiting, what can I say? Okay, so what a joke. How about you, George? No? Not that good joke. Okay. We're an intimate group here, although, Vitor promises me there's like 80,000 people watching on the streaming here live, so, there I am. Okay. So, in the smart cities journey I've been on, I spent many years looking at the entire scope of what a smart city is. I built the Smart Cities Wheel, which has been used here and around the world as a way to sort of benchmark and rank and evaluate smart cities. Here with Rob Adams, who spoke yesterday, we actually did a modernization of the Smart Cities Wheel, looking at it from the bottom up, from a happy citizen perspective. That was several years ago from the Smart City Expo output. And in the Smart Cities Wheel and all my work, of course, in the smart city space, you have something around energy and people and the way the government interacts with residents. You have buildings. You have ICT infrastructure of all kinds. So you have these sort of different categories of smart cities activity. And over time, I decided to get more and more focused on one of those. And for me, it's mobility. very passionate about mobility. I don't drive a car. I don't have a driver's license. I actually hate being in cars. I really do. And I live my life on trains, bikes. I mountain bike every weekend, scooters, transit, metro. That's how I move around the world. And because of that background I have, I was inspired to build a company that was really focused on these challenges that we see in the mobility space. All of us here in this room, because anyone who cares about smart cities is well aware of the issues we have with climate change. And you're all aware, I'm sure, that transit is one of the biggest contributors to climate change worldwide and the largest one of individuals. So while industry still has more emissions from energy, us as people consume more emissions from our mobility choices, flying, driving everywhere, etc. And it's the only category of activity economically in the world that has not reduced its rate of emissions since 1990. Funny though, it's also one of the categories of innovation where we've had the most introduction of alternatives that would allow us to live a carbon neutral lifestyle. There are tens of thousands of public, private, and shared mobility services that are green, that are either net zero or very green. Scooter fleets, bike sharing fleets, electric car sharing fleets, trains, buses, even ferries or even electric ferries. So we've seen a lot of innovation in the opportunities for business models and for technology to contribute to low carbon mobility. But we still haven't gotten there in terms of adopting it at scale. And that's what my company IMOB has been focused on, is how do we solve that? So this is an example. This is from like 3 years ago, and that's only like a microcosm of all the different kinds of emergent mobility services that have come into the market. Many of these business models and companies didn't exist 5 years ago. It's been an explosion. The barrier to entry to offer mobility services in cities around the world is fairly low compared to a lot of other technology innovations, right? In terms of the cost of the introduction of the technology, the deployment. You look at some of the early examples and trials around bike sharing and like, Bird. Bird started, I mean, they're a crazy story, right? Because they started in California about 2018-ish, I think. And within a year, they were worth $1 billion already. Now they're worth much less because their business model is being challenged. But, how did they got so big so fast, and all they did was acquire cheap scooters, put some software in it so you could rent it on demand, put them out on the street, and people just started using them. So the barrier to entry is low. Of course, cities have struggled with their relationship with some of these services, and increasingly they're putting regulations or prohibiting them, which has been part of their challenge to scaling their business over time. But we've seen just a massive infusion of new mobility services. One of the things that's so interesting to me, and this kind of ties into something that's probably out of scope for this conversation, is that each of these organizations are embracing a Web 2 mindset and a walled garden. So if for some of you are familiar with that in the sort of Web 2 world or the software world, a walled garden is the idea of, I'm going to build a product, I'm going to own my user, and I'll own them probably through a mobile app, and they're mine, and they're stuck with me, and the only way they can get my service is when they download my app and book through my app. That Web 2 mindset has led to a lot of problems and inefficiencies, not just in transportation mobility, but in every industry. I'm really bullish on blockchain and Web3. And I don't want to waste our time trying to, because this blockchain tends to be a subject that in the smart city space, a lot of the audience is not yet that familiar with. So I don't want to bog you down in details. But the concept of tackling fragmentation problems and coordination problems in transportation through blockchain is very powerful. And why is that so is because If every company that launches a service and every transit agency that has their own public transit service has their own app, if all these services exist, car sharing, bike sharing, scooter sharing, trains, buses, bikes, urban air mobility, you name it, all these are all separate apps. All right, take Rob and I, we came here from other parts of Europe the last few days. We come to Porto for a day and we're moving around. How many mobility services that operate in Porto have an app that we have? As in, he lives in Eindhoven, I live in Barcelona. Very few companies that have apps on my phone operate mobility services in Porto. In some cases, none. Even Uber in many markets doesn't operate, right? So the challenge of this fragmentation all around the world means it's super hard for any one of us to navigate all the fragmented mobility services that are all in this Web 2 paradigm that they all want to own their own user with their own app. The idea of a more decentralized approach to mobility that facilitates a more seamless connectivity of mobility services around the world is that you and I can travel anywhere in the world using whatever mobile app we want, and we can discover mobility services near us, like a scooter or a bike, regardless of whether we have that bike or scooter company on our phone. We can get a combined multimodal journey. Ari, who was here yesterday, just is on a train back to Lisbon today. You know, if he had a service like this, he could do a door-to-door journey with a rail operator that would allow him to do his whole journey through one app and book a taxi if he needs it, or an Uber, a scooter for his last mile if he wants, and not have to discover the mobility services in each part of his journey. Same with me when I go back to Barcelona. What happens when I or Rob or Ari or whoever arrives to the airport in Porto and we realize none of the apps we have on our phone are useful in Porto? What do most people do? They go to the taxi stand, take a taxi. That's what they do. Like 98% of people who travel, that's what they do. Why? I don't want to figure out I don't even know the local even if I know one, I have to download a new app. I'm only going to be here for 3 days. Forget it. I'm just going to go and take a taxi. Well, if the whole world just takes a taxi, or similarly, like this happens with our clients in the UK, London Northeastern Rail is one of our clients that's using our technology to provide seamless door-to-door journeys for their passengers. The idea, they call more journeys more often. They project 6 million more journeys per year because they're using our technology. And why do they project that? Is because their users tell them that the reason they don't take trains more often is it's too frustrating to figure out how and when to get to the train station. Will they get there on time? Then when they get to the other station, because it's in another city, none of their apps work. They don't know if they'll get to the meeting on time. So they just take their car, which is in the garage. They have a key. They go open their garage door, they open their car, and they go to the destination. Okay, they're going to be stuck in traffic for 3 hours. They're not going to be able to use the internet or work during that time because they're driving. They're contributing to their own poor quality of life because they're stuck in traffic, which is stressful. They're contributing to climate change, and they could do it probably in many cases faster if they did a door-to-door journey with London Northeastern Rail, but it's too complicated for them to figure out the first and last mile, so they just forget and take the car. Based on their own user research, they can get 6 million more journeys if they solve this fragmentation problem in all these cities. Because they go from London Northeastern Rail all the way to Brighton, or no, not Brighton, they go to Scotland. And on that journey, there's many cities that are not served by the mobility service providers that exist in London. And so if I'm a user in London, all my apps for moving around London are useless when I get to another town. So people just say, forget it, I'll just take my own car, despite all the reasons they shouldn't take their car. So that's the concept of, for those of you familiar with mobility and smart cities, you will all have heard of the terms mobility as a service. MaaS. Our first product is a platform that does what I just described. We basically connect services. We have Uber and Bolt, but we also have we have taxis, we have scooters, we have bikes, we have parking, we will have EV charging, we have Via bus on demand services. We integrate all these services into this software platform, and then we allow public or private organizations, train companies, cities, transit agencies, airlines, hotels, to add mobility networks to their own mobile app. So you're in the, I don't know, you're in the Marriott Hotels app and you want to figure out how to get to and from your airport and your hotel, you could just, we don't work with Marriott, but if they did, if they integrated our technology, they could allow their visitors to use their app to move all around the world without having to find local apps for every mobility service. And then once they get to the hotel and they're going to be there for 3 days, they could use the app to move around on scooters and bikes and public transit without having to download different apps for everything. That's what we're trying to do. And why we're trying to do that is because of what I said here. This is why we're trying to do it. How do we get more people out of cars and into sustainable, shared, multimodal mobility? Is, first of all, we've got to tackle the fragmentation problem that exists with this Web 2 mindset. So this is our first platform product. This is what I was just describing. We basically take APIs, for those of you familiar with that. We take APIs, we integrate the Uber and the Bolts and the Tiers and the Voice all the way so that you as a user, if you're using our technology, you don't know you're using our technology because we're not a consumer brand. We plug this inside as like an Intel Inside middleware solution into train apps and transit apps, etc., so they can offer this to their user base. But if you're using it, you can discover services around you. You can get a journey plan that allows you to combine everything. Even things like for Brightline Trains, our client in the US, as well as London Northeastern Rail, they both wanted parking at the train station to be one of the options for users so people could do park and ride. You know, we always think cars are evil, and I'm not a huge car fan, but cars have a role. You know, a lot of times people live in areas where a car is kind of like the only option. But instead of it being the only option to go all the way door to door, why don't you make it easier for somebody to take the car to a station so then they can ride the train the rest of the way? So we built that into our journey planner, so you could factor in your own private car to do a park and ride. You can book your parking in advance, you book your train in advance, you're on the train, you can either book your last mile in advance or you can book it while you're on the train. Or like me, many times, I know I'm kind of crazy this way because I just love, I really do, I love using green mobility and bikes and scooters and everything. I'll take a train, and if I'm on a short trip where I only have a backpack or something, I'll look for a scooter at the train station I'm arriving to. And with our technology, you can discover, route, book, so you can reserve it, you can unlock it, like unlock a scooter, take it, lock it, pay for, without ever downloading the app of that scooter company. Now, when you think about when you move around cities, you move around a country, you move around the world, how powerful that is to not have to have all these different apps on your phone, download new apps. And that friction that we create from this Web 2 mindset is such a barrier for people moving greener. And that's what we're trying to tackle. So that platform we built is there already. But in the concept of MOS, in fact, I'm going to jump ahead to another slide for a second. I'm going to jump all the way to here for a second. In the world of MOS, mobility as a service, there's been for 10 years this concept of 4 levels of aspiration for mobility as a service. And the 4th level is seen as like the holy grail. The holy grail of MOS is, can you embed societal incentives so that people are encouraged to move greener and use all these sustainable mobility services through incentives, through nudging mechanisms that allow sustainable mobility to be more inclusive, so more people have access to it, not just wealthy people, but also we accelerate the adoption of these greener mobility options. What we decided last year was that our platform was not succeeding in level 4. It was good for the earlier levels of solving fragmentation the way we described, but it wasn't solving this other pain. And instead of trying to solve it through the same product initially, we said, why don't we create a new product? And that's what Wheelcoin is. So I'm going to introduce you to Wheelcoin. So WheelCoin is an app. You can all download WheelCoin right now. I hope you do. It's in the App Store, iOS, Android. Some people are downloading it. I see that already. So, you know, with the crazy audience we have here, I'll get at least 8 more downloads from this community today. Really excited about that. So what WheelCoin does is if I download as a user, I move around. I authorize the app to track my movements. I don't even have to look at the app. I don't have to turn it on. I could leave it, I could not have the app on for a week. It doesn't matter. If I have my GPS on and I authorize the app to use my mobility data, the app detects what mobility choices you make. It knows if you're walking, biking, on a train, on a bus, in a car, or a plane, and a ferry. It rewards you with WheelCoin. 1 WHL is equal to 1 kilogram of avoided emissions. How do we do that? Well, the technical part of it is we have a detection system that uses the hardware, triangulates data from your smartphone hardware. Your GPS, your speed of motion, your accelerometer for your motion, and it detects with 95% accuracy what you were on. You earn WheelCoin, and then WheelCoin can be used. We call it the air miles for green mobility. So you get WheelCoin. You know, air miles, you get air miles for flying, so you're contributing to climate change, right? Why not get an air miles for doing the opposite, for saving emissions by choosing greener options? That's what WheelCoin is. It's air miles for green mobility, passively detects, but it also does something just like air miles. You'll be able to see this here in the video. It's a video of my actual app that I have on my phone. Passively detected my motion these days. I got different amounts of WheelCoin for how much I moved, in which mode of mobility. And then down here we have redeem your WHL for discounts. These are all the discounts we've negotiated with companies around Europe and the world who are starting to offer us, to our users, you burn WHL that you've earned for free by moving green, and you get discounts on green mobility services and other kinds of services. So trains, EV car sharing, Heathrow Express. That's actually a metaverse thing because some of our customers wanted that. Flixbus, a bus service discount, Tier, Dot. These are examples of deals we already have in the app. You get them for free, these discounts, just by moving green. By doing the right thing, you get WheelCoin. Not only can you do that with WheelCoin, but you can do other things too that are really fun. So we have this program right here, Digital Collectibles Program. The first version had 100 collectibles from 20 cities around the world where we have a lot of users. And we have users in 140 countries right now. And yes, we have some in Portugal. It's kind of fun. You burn a WheelCoin and you get a surprise collectible comes out of the box. And the first version of this was celebrating train stations around the world. But the next version is, I'll show you, I have some examples, it's even more fun than those collectibles. Those you're getting for free too, and they're now on the blockchain. I don't want to bore you with details about what that means to be on the blockchain, but what it does mean is that any digital asset a user acquires in WheelCoin, they own. And it's not that they own it like you own in, I don't know, my daughter uses Roblox, right? She spends, well, I say we spend $10 a month on her subscription, right? And that's because she wants to be able to get more skins and more things for her profile and everything. The problem is, she's 11 now, she acts and looks like she's 15, and so any day now, she's gonna, I don't care about Roblox anymore. But what happens to all these digital assets she acquired, all these skins and I don't know, all the stuff she does there? All gone when she leaves. Can she sell them? Does she own them? No, they're not hers. When everything is on the blockchain, the user who acquires digital assets, whether that's WHL, the reward token, or whether that's digital collectibles, they own those things. And what does that mean they can do? They can buy and sell them in the open market. That we already have live. We have a dashboard tool, which I was showing a little bit there, which allows us to track anonymized data for user bases. We're using that with companies. So companies are using WheelCoin for business now, which is they encourage their employees to download the app. We give the company an anonymized dashboard, so they now have good data about the emissions of the mobility choices of their employees. We have leaderboards so they can create competitions to try to encourage their employees to move greener. They can have a monthly or annual prize for the greenest mobility employee, etc. And also, and one of the reasons I came here is I was talking to Vitor about this a few months ago, is that we're now rolling out something we call WheelCoin for Cities, which is currently, I don't know if I should say this with streaming, but I'll say it for now. Currently, it's free for cities. It won't be probably forever, but right now it's free. So I'm not selling anything. I'm offering this to help grow the community around the world right now, is what we're doing. So this is a case study of our first city rollout. The city promotes the adoption of WheelCoin. There's a video that runs here in their train stations. So in their trains and their buses, they have an infotainment system that encourages their residents to download the app and be part of this green revolution. These are 3 cities in Sweden that are part of the Net Zero EU Cities Initiative. They get digital collectibles designed for their community, but this time, instead of those little train station icons, they look like this now. We're using artificial intelligence to generate points of interest digital collectibles. So we work with the cities to say which points of interest in your city you want to promote in the app. Then we embed them. We're adding something for any of you who've ever experienced Pokemon Go. We're adding something like Pokemon Go into it, which is, you know that surprise box I showed you before when I pay a WheelCoin and some surprise collectible comes out? We're still doing that, but now we're going to have an extra part of our algorithm that the closer you are to a digital collectible, the higher the probability is you'll get it. So there's a bit more local flavor to it and a more desire from users to be more connected to the app and to the experience. Finally, they are offering things like discounts on public transit. So their residents can actually burn WheelCoin and get discounts on transit services by moving green in their own city. This is a precursor to where we think we will eventually get, which is WheelCoin as a loyalty token could actually be used as a payment token. It could actually be used for paying for public transit services. Cities could say, well, we'll give you discounts, or we'll allow you to burn 100 WheelCoin. You can actually get a monthly transit pass, or whatever that is. That's where we think it could eventually go. And I'm wrapping up. This is the journey we've been on. So we built IMOB a long time ago, the core mobility network. Now we've launched WheelCoin and WheelCoin for Cities. We're launching now with Santiago de Chile and Valdivia, Chile. They're launching in July. And then, you know what we are going to do that's really interesting is we're going to actually integrate WheelCoin and IMOB as one solution as well. We'll keep them separate, but some of our clients are saying, you know what, we'd like to have both. Remember this thing here? They want both in one. They want a platform that allows people to move green easier by solving fragmentation, and they want an incentive scheme that actually allows their users to earn WheelCoin and spend them on the services inside the same app. Well, so we're going to be embedding the functions of WheelCoin inside our core mobility network. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Boyd. It's really, really impressive work that you are bringing this time to Portugal. You will have the chance in the next panel to talk a little bit more about these solutions. They have a lot of technology, embedded technology, but also they have like a big intelligence approach to the cities and to users that need to embrace also this new pragmatism of choosing green transportation and get better for the environment. Thank you so much, Boyd.
Thank you.
It has been a pleasure. And agora, em português, passamos novamente para a nossa língua nativa. And by the way, you will have at least 10 more downloads, probably. Chamava agora ao palco o João Petinga Almeida, é consultor de cidades inteligentes da Babel Smart Cities. É licenciado em Engenharia Civil pelo Instituto Superior Técnico e mestre na mesma área, com especialização em urbanismo e sistemas de transportes. Trabalhou para a Siemens Mobility e Unex Traffic, antiga empresa do grupo Siemens, na implementação de várias tecnologias de mobilidade inteligente. A sua principal motivação é ajudar as cidades a gerir as suas infraestruturas de forma mais inteligente e eficiente. João, bem-vindo. É também um grande prazer receber a Babel Smart Cities aqui enquanto parceiro deste evento e também aqui na cidade de Famalicão.
Obrigado, Vítor. Bom dia a todos. Mais uma vez, obrigado ao Vítor pelo convite e também à Câmara de Famalicão pela organização deste evento. Desculpem, eu estou só aqui. As cores ficaram diferentes por algum motivo, mas se calhar vou só assumir a perda, não faz mal. Em primeiro lugar, gostava de vos apresentar a Babel. Nós somos uma empresa recente, que nasceu em 2017 e que só chegou este ano a Portugal. E, portanto, vou apresentar-vos o que é que a Babel e o que é que nós fazemos neste momento. Peço-vos desculpa porque as cores estão mesmo completamente diferentes da minha apresentação. A minha apresentação é toda mais ou menos em tons de azul, mas fico em amarelo. Não sei se conseguem resolver isto ou se... Vou continuar, desculpem. Portanto, estava a dizer-vos, a empresa nasceu na Alemanha, em Stuttgart, onde nós temos o nosso headquarter, e neste momento já temos escritórios em 7 países, portanto, temos na Alemanha, temos em Espanha, temos agora em Portugal a partir deste ano, estamos também presentes no Reino Unido, Dinamarca e na Roménia, onde temos o nosso foco na área digital. A nossa missão é ser o principal facilitador da Europa na implementação de projetos na área das cidades inteligentes e, portanto, o nosso objetivo é envolver-nos neste ecossistema e conseguirmos fazer a ponte entre o privado e o setor público. No fundo, para promover soluções que aumentem a sustentabilidade, reduzam a pegada de carbono e, no fundo, melhorem a qualidade de vida da população. Para terem um bocado a percepção do nosso percurso, nós em 2017 éramos 4 pessoas, eu não fazia parte desse grupo inicial, e hoje em dia já somos 55. Esta é uma foto que nós tirámos em janeiro, num evento que tivemos na Floresta Negra, na Alemanha. Neste caso não estavam aqui as 55 pessoas, mas só para terem uma ideia da equipa. Em relação àquilo que nós fazemos e ao que é que são os nossos serviços, o nosso principal foco é a nossa plataforma de cidades inteligentes, em que nós conseguimos fazer uma amostra de todo o conhecimento, ou promover a partilha de conhecimento entre cidades, empresas e peritos na área das cidades inteligentes. Nesta própria plataforma temos outros serviços associados, tanto para públicos como para privados, quer seja na procura de oportunidades, na procura de fundos e, no fundo, para facilitar este ecossistema de stakeholders interessados na promoção destas soluções. Também fazemos certificação, temos os nossos especialistas, consultores em várias áreas. Por exemplo, a minha área é mais ligada à mobilidade, como é a área em que o Boyd hoje está a trabalhar, mas temos especialistas em todas as áreas, seja nas áreas de telecomunicações, mais de eficiência energética, portanto temos especialistas em diferentes áreas. E depois temos um grande portfólio de formação tanto para privados como para o setor público. Os principais desafios que ajudamos a mitigar, como vos estava a dizer, são basicamente a conseguir criar esta ponte entre os públicos e os privados e a fazer um tackle a estas principais dificuldades que as cidades têm, porque muitas vezes as cidades, nós sabemos que têm fundos disponíveis, mas nós vemos que há uma utilização ineficaz destes fundos e mesmo da adaptação que têm nos seus orçamentos e na maneira como os utilizam e como têm um foco e a estratégia bem definida. Portanto, nós tentamos ajudar as cidades a tomar medidas concretas na implementação de tecnologia inteligente que melhor a gestão da sua infraestrutura. E tentamos aproximar as empresas tentamos que tenham acesso mais facilitado ao mercado. Portanto, no fundo, nós facilitamos um canal de comunicação transparente e sem uma ligação ou sem estarmos presos a determinados stakeholders do lado da tecnologia. Portanto, somos um player neutro nesta ponte entre as cidades e as empresas. Portanto, nós somos muito orientados para o impacto e, por exemplo, na nossa plataforma temos mais de 800 casos de uso e temos uma base de dados bastante alargada, quer seja de propostas, de candidaturas, acesso a fundos europeus. Aqui para terem uma percepção do que é o nosso trabalho nestes 6 anos de percurso da Bubble e também terem uma ideia dos nossos principais clientes. Por exemplo, ao nível das plataformas, nós já desenvolvemos plataformas oficiais de matchmaking para a União Europeia, já desenvolvemos uma comunidade climática para a cidade de Stuttgart e também uma plataforma nacional na Suíça para ligar todos os players na área das cidades inteligentes. Por outro lado, também temos soluções para privados. Um dos nossos clientes é a Mercedes, também em Stuttgart, e por estarem também na cidade de Stuttgart. E o nosso foco, ou outra das grandes atividades que a empresa tem, é o desenvolvimento destas estratégias de cidades inteligentes e desenvolvimento das regiões. Também trabalhamos com projetos europeus e, só para vos dar um exemplo, um desses projetos também na área da mobilidade é o Move to CCAM, em que nós estamos a estudar o impacto destas tecnologias de mobilidade conectada, cooperativa e autónoma nos aspectos mais comportamentais e de como é que influenciam a comunidade. Mais uma vez temos aqui um exemplo dos nossos parceiros. A lista é bastante extensa. E tudo isto pode ser visto na nossa plataforma, no site da Bubble. Depois também vos deixo o link. E agora, passando mesmo ao tema que trazia para esta apresentação, que é como é que nós transformamos, ou quais é que são as ferramentas que são necessárias para transformar as cidades em cidades inteligentes, e aqui como subtema a questão da sustentabilidade, ou seja, porque é que a sustentabilidade tem que ser, obrigatoriamente, a estratégia de desenvolvimento económico de qualquer região, de qualquer cidade, independentemente da sua escala e da sua dimensão. O que é que faz uma cidade inteligente? Na verdade, as cidades inteligentes combinam a parte tecnológica, a parte administrativa ou governamental e os aspectos de desenvolvimento da sociedade e da comunidade que estão a comandar. Mas este conceito não é um conceito estático, é um processo e sabemos que muitas cidades neste momento estão a investir arduamente neste processo para se tornar mais habitáveis, mas acima de tudo mais resilientes e com mais capacidade de sobreviver e também de competir no mercado em que se inserem. Isto pode ser feito com vários objetivos e depende de cada cidade e do objetivo, da estratégia de cada região, mas pode ser, por exemplo, para realizar ganhos de eficiência ou muitas vezes para reduzir custos de cada município ou para contribuir para a redução de emissões de CO2. Isso depois vai depender do foco de cada região. Portanto, como vos dizia, temos 3 dimensões, peço desculpa. Temos a dimensão tecnológica, baseada na utilização de sistemas de infraestrutura urbanas, portanto, tecnologia de informação e comunicação. Temos a dimensão humana, que é baseada nas pessoas, que nunca podemos esquecer, na qualidade de vida e na educação e na aprendizagem, e é basicamente isso que queremos fomentar com a aplicação de tecnologias mais inteligentes. E depois temos a dimensão institucional, com todas as instituições e todos os stakeholders governamentais que estão envolvidos neste ecossistema. Depois podemos olhar para uma cidade inteligente e perceber que temos vários silos, portanto temos a mobilidade, temos o espaço público, a produção e logística, água e saneamento, turismo, energia, edifícios, temos saúde, assistência social a idosos, mas na verdade nós não podemos pensar nestes silos individualmente e pensar apenas em soluções modulares, temos que pensar na interoperabilidade do sistema e na forma como gerimos tudo de maneira integrada e de acordo com a estratégia que estamos a traçar para cada região. Portanto, o que une todos estes silos acaba por ser a informação e os dados que vamos recolher destes sistemas e a maneira como, de uma forma integrada, conseguimos gerir todos os sistemas e no caminho da nossa função objetivo. Qual é que é o objetivo que nós queremos realmente atingir e quais é que são as metas e de que forma é que as medimos e como é que vamos chegar lá. E é esta a dificuldade, muitas vezes, das regiões. Obviamente temos o papel do governo e a parte política aqui com grande peso, não esquecendo os ciclos eleitorais que em Portugal também têm um grande impacto. Mas, no fundo, porque é que as áreas urbanas e rurais precisam destas soluções inovadoras e inteligentes? Porque é que nós estamos a pensar em soluções que são diferentes daquilo que são as soluções que já temos vindo a implementar nos últimos anos? Na verdade, e peço-vos desculpa porque não conseguem ver da melhor forma este gráfico, mas o que nós temos aqui mostrado é a pegada ecológica e a forma como está relacionada com o desenvolvimento das cidades. E o que nós percebemos à data é que a forma como temos vindo a planear e a forma como as pessoas que trabalham no desenvolvimento urbano e na planificação das cidades têm implementado soluções, levou-nos a uma situação em que não estamos a cumprir ou não estamos de acordo com os limites da capacidade do nosso planeta como um todo. Portanto, a capacidade do planeta nós sabemos que é limitada, tem fim e, portanto, nós estamos acima já dessa capacidade. Portanto, nós precisamos de inverter isto de alguma forma e garantir que, com soluções inovadoras, nós conseguimos entrar neste quadrante, que é o quadrante da sustentabilidade e do desenvolvimento sustentável. Portanto, aqui o grande desafio é como é que nós conseguimos chegar lá. Nós precisamos de soluções que sejam fundamentalmente diferentes daquilo que tem vindo a ser implementado nas últimas décadas para chegar a este quadrante do desenvolvimento sustentável. Para além disso, há outros fatores que impulsionam o desenvolvimento de soluções smart, soluções inteligentes, desde o aumento da temperatura média anual, ao crescimento nas zonas rurais e o custo de infraestrutura que isso acarreta e como é que chegamos a essas zonas, o congestionamento de tráfego, o abrandamento económico de algumas zonas e também a pobreza energética. Portanto, em jeito de panorama geral, quais é que são os principais factores e os desafios que temos para alterar este status quo e a realidade que vivemos atualmente? Portanto, nós sabemos que temos, do lado do mercado e do lado das empresas, temos uma grande pressão e temos um grande desenvolvimento tecnológico e temos, por isso, muitas soluções a aparecer de sistemas inteligentes. Eu agora perdi aqui o ecrã, não sei se... Este ecrã... ok. Por outro lado, temos um grande impulso político e mesmo a nível da União Europeia e do Reino Unido há uma grande pressão para atingir as metas as metas ambientais. Portanto, também da mesma forma nós temos uma certeza que é a digitalização é inevitável. E todos os sistemas e em tudo o que nos rodeia, tudo o que puder ser digitalizado vai ser digitalizado e é algo que nós não vamos conseguir contrariar. Portanto, temos que usar isso a nosso favor e perceber como é que trabalhamos com os dados. Para além disso, nós vivemos hoje num dia em que esta digitalização promove um maior envolvimento das pessoas, ou pelo menos uma maior proximidade das pessoas. As pessoas estão mais próximas da informação e também mais aptas a participar no processo e no desenvolvimento das estratégias. Portanto, isto é outra coisa que ainda adiciona uma camada de dificuldade ao processo de desenvolvimento destas estratégias sustentáveis. Portanto, isto ainda vai dificultar ainda mais o nosso ecossistema. Portanto, como vos dizia, há um grande impulso do mercado e das soluções do lado das empresas. Portanto, as cidades estão a investir cada vez mais em novas tecnologias e a controlar a transformação digital e a traçar o seu próprio percurso e a forma como vão criar o impacto na vida dos cidadãos. E esta trend é válida para o mercado das cidades inteligentes ou das regiões inteligentes, mas ainda é mais verdade, ou seja, o ritmo de crescimento ainda é maior quando falamos apenas de dados e de sistemas de gestão de dados. Isto é um crescimento que é notório nos últimos anos. Como vos dizia, temos a questão da pressão política, portanto, tanto do lado da União Europeia como do Reino Unido, temos objetivos climáticos muito exigentes. Sabemos que em Portugal estamos longe de atingir os objetivos e não vemos que seja fazível em 2030 nós termos cumpridos os grandes objetivos que estão traçados, mas temos esta meta e, portanto, temos um objetivo a cumprir. E temos a questão dos dados que acabam por ser essenciais na gestão de todos os silos, quer de forma integrada, como vos estava a dizer, e temos uma grande variedade de dados, para além do grande número de dados, temos uma grande variedade de dados e o número de entidades que gera os dados é também cada vez maior. Portanto, temos aqui um ecossistema de dados também muito complexo. Mas, voltando aqui atrás, podemos, ao longo do tempo, tem delineado estas 6 áreas de transformação global que acabam por moldar a forma como a inovação, como este ecossistema da inovação vai evoluir ao longo dos próximos tempos. Portanto, não só a questão da digitalização, mas tem as principais tendências são, acima de tudo, o futuro do trabalho, a automação, a transição energética, segurança e descarbonização, a mobilidade, portos e logística inteligentes, edifícios inteligentes e neutros em carbono e o espaço urbano conectado e a envolvência das comunidades nesta descentralização e no valor que conseguimos criar com elas. Portanto, para os municípios e para os privados é importante ter em conta estas grandes tendências, porque é isto que vai ditar quais é que são as soluções que vão ser desenvolvidas e o que é que o mercado vai estar à procura, ou o que é que os municípios vão estar à procura no mercado. Portanto, na prática, o que nós queremos é aumentar os potenciais de eficiência, portanto, queremos fazer mais com menos, queremos decidir com base nos dados a que temos acesso e queremos ter a certeza que estes dados são guardados ou que são mantidos. A gestão desses dados é feita de forma correta e queremos controlar em tempo real os sistemas em rede. Portanto, queremos ter uma gestão integrada para, acima de tudo, melhorar os nossos níveis de serviço a todos os níveis dentro dos subsistemas dos municípios. No fundo, os objetivos são uma maior sustentabilidade e resiliência, maior prosperidade, colaboração e inovação e uma melhor qualidade de vida e igualdade no acesso aos serviços. Agora, em jeito de resumo, quais é que são os principais blocos de uma estratégia de desenvolvimento bem-sucedida, quer seja para uma cidade, quer seja para uma região inteligente, para uma vila mais pequena? É importante termos sempre uma visão bem definida, com metas bem definidas, com objetivos que sejam mensuráveis. Portanto, nós temos que perceber quais é que são os objetivos a longo prazo, mas também temos que ter objetivos a curto prazo e que nos permitam medir ao longo do tempo a forma como as soluções que nós estamos a implementar estão a ir ao encontro desses objetivos. Temos que ser inovadores também nos modelos de negócio e na forma como procuramos financiamento, como vamos chegar aos players de mercado, como é que escolhemos as tecnologias, e temos que ter a consciência que estamos num ecossistema com muitos parceiros. É importante estarmos cientes das inovações tecnológicas, mas também envolvermos na comunidade e envolver também a indústria neste desenvolvimento. Depois temos toda uma data de plataformas que se têm vindo a desenvolver como um serviço, portanto, ter essa questão na inovação dos serviços e depois ter embebida nas próprias organizações e no próprio governo ou nas próprias estruturas municipais esta capacidade para implementar mudança e transformação dentro das organizações, que muitas vezes é uma dificuldade dos municípios. Quando é que tudo isto falha? Normalmente, pela nossa experiência, o que acontece muitas vezes é que os municípios ou as zonas que estão a definir estas estratégias de desenvolvimento ou estratégias de implementação de soluções inteligentes não têm uma grande clareza naquilo que querem implementar, ou falta-lhes conhecimento, ou falta-lhes especialistas que dominem certas áreas, podem não ter objetivos claros, portanto, não têm um plano de replicação, ou muitas vezes estas soluções inteligentes não estão integradas, como diziam ontem, com os planos diretores municipais, ou não há um plano de cidades inteligentes que cubra todas as áreas dentro de um município. Depois temos a questão dos contratos públicos e da dotação orçamental para cada um dos temas dentro dos municípios. Temos esforços digitais, portanto, há falta de envolvimento da comunidade e muitas vezes nem todos os processos estão digitalizados dentro das organizações. Depois temos a questão do vendor lock-in. Ainda há bocado o Boyd falava da questão como nós temos muitas aplicações para recorrer à mobilidade no nosso dia-a-dia, mas isso é válido para todos os tipos de sistemas e nós temos que garantir no final que todos os sistemas têm uma arquitetura que não é fechada e que consegue ser interoperável e que permite a gestão integrada. E outro dos grandes... uma das falácias, se calhar, mais comuns é achar que apenas podemos pensar em cidades inteligentes, em cidades com uma dimensão gigante. Isso é uma coisa que nem sequer se aplica à realidade da Bubble, porque nós começámos agora em Portugal e a verdade é que nós trabalhamos com comunidades mais pequenas, com vilas mais pequenas e que também têm que partir daquilo que são as suas valências para definir a estratégia para competir no mercado em que se inserem e para implementar soluções que vão ao encontro das necessidades da comunidade de cada região. Por último, e terminando esta parte das ferramentas para tornar as cidades mais inteligentes, queria apresentar-vos a Civinet Iberia, que é uma rede em Portugal e Espanha, cujo secretariado passou a ser parte da responsabilidade da Bubble, da minha empresa. Esta rede é uma rede, como vos dizia, local da Civitas, e o grande objetivo é a partilha de conhecimento entre Portugal e Espanha e entre regiões com a mesma dimensão ou com os mesmos desafios na área da mobilidade urbana sustentável. Portanto, esta rede já existia, a Civinet Iberia já existia, mas por volta de 2019 deixou de ter... Não havia atividade à volta desta rede, portanto nós começámos a dinamizar a partir do início deste ano a atividade desta rede. E basicamente o que estas redes que trabalham de forma independente, o que elas fazem é usar a Civitas para promover a implementação de soluções em regime regional. Portanto, aqui, entre Portugal e Espanha, o que nós estamos a tentar fazer é melhorar a cooperação entre os players desta rede para, por exemplo, formar consórcios, promover cooperação e partilha de experiências na implementação de soluções de mobilidade urbana sustentável, acima de tudo porque há cidades ou vilas com problemas muito semelhantes nos dois países e que têm soluções implementadas com diferentes níveis de maturidade. E o objetivo é facilitar e tornar mais rápida a implementação dessa tecnologia através da partilha de experiências. O que é que distingue esta rede das outras redes? Acima de tudo é o foco que temos nesta cooperação entre Portugal e Espanha e o ênfase na mobilidade urbana sustentável. Em relação aos membros que temos da rede, esta rede acabou de ser criada, nós tivemos a reunião de embaixadores há 2 meses e esta é a nossa lista de embaixadores neste momento, portanto nós já contamos com a colaboração do município de Braga e em Portugal do IMT, do Instituto Superior Técnico e, por exemplo, em Espanha já contamos com os operadores de transporte público quer de Barcelona, quer de Madrid. Nós ainda estamos a formar esta rede, portanto, isto ainda é um trabalho que ainda está a decorrer, mas ainda estamos no papel de construção desta rede e de fomentar a comunicação entre os embaixadores e a desenvolver ainda a rede. Portanto, também vos deixo aqui o convite, não sei se estão aqui presentes representantes de municípios, mas se quiserem fazer parte desta rede ou mesmo seguir a atividade da Civinet Ibéria, depois vou-vos deixar a informação mais à frente. Só em jeito de conclusão, para vos deixar exemplos de projetos que já temos vindo a desenvolver em Portugal e em Espanha. Temos aqui o caso da cidade Onda, em Espanha, onde onde fizemos uma análise dos planos e das estratégias que o município tinha desenvolvido, fizemos um mapeamento das entidades envolvidas neste ecossistema de cidades inteligentes e fizemos uma atualização completa do plano diretor de Smart Cities. Já em Portugal, na região da Guarda, desenvolvemos um conceito de investimento que vai mais ao encontro da implementação de comunidades de energia renovável num grupo de 5 municípios, portanto, neste caso Guarda, Figueira de Castelo Rodrigo, Pinhel, Trancoso e Almeida, e mais tarde já viemos a trabalhar com outros municípios também na área de Bragança com o mesmo intuito. A questão é que nós, como players, que tentamos ser o mais neutros possível, fazemos o acompanhamento não só destes projetos, como da própria procura de financiamento destes projetos e depois também para a parte de implementação desenvolvemos os conceitos de investimento para que o pôr em causa, o pôr no terreno destes projetos seja facilitado com o nosso trabalho. Depois temos aqui outros projetos que não vos vou referir a todos, claro. E muito obrigado. Deixo-vos aqui os meus contactos e também os QR Codes também para a Civinet e para a plataforma da Babel, se tiverem curiosidade. Obrigado.
Muito obrigado, João. Obrigado, João Almeida, pela interessante apresentação do que a Babel tem feito em Portugal e Espanha. E agora fazemos um curto intervalo e voltamos para o painel final desta manhã aqui do Fórum B-Smart. Temos um cafezinho lá fora e águas, acho eu. apresentar. Eu vou passar o microfone depois ao moderador. Olá, estamos de regresso, mas ainda não estamos todos. Ainda faltam os restantes 160 que se inscreveram. Vamos lá ver porque temos agora o último painel aqui na Fundação Cupertino de Miranda. Podemos tirar a música de ambiente. É o último painel, é um painel que também sofreu uma baixa de última hora, através da Marina, que está doente. Teve que ser internada e nem sequer Zoom conseguimos ter, mas de qualquer maneira não é nada grave e infelizmente são coisas que acontecem, estamos todos sujeitos a elas. E então este painel vai versar sobre as infraestruturas digitais e físicas e como promover e proteger cidadãos e locais. E teremos aqui tanto o Rob Adams como o Boyd Cohen como a Kiran Bagotra são pessoas com uma presença internacional com alguma relevância. E então I'm going to switch to English because they are already starting talking outside of the stage. That's the usual with George anyway. So basically I will call Kiran Bagotra from Protect Box, Rob Adams, Six Fingers, and Boyd Cohen IO Mob. So join us in the panel. And to moderate, I call George Saraiva, of course, is going to be your host for today. And I just enjoy in the front line. Welcome.
Obrigado. Está a funcionar?
That's a good introduction.
Rob, assim se destroem as infraestruturas do evento?
He just wanted to wake everyone up.
Yeah.
Ok, então vamos acordar as pessoas. Deixem só fazer uma pergunta antes de começarmos, enquanto eles limpam os copos. E só estamos a começar. Antes de depois de partir para as garrafas, deixem-me fazer só uma pergunta aqui à audiência. Quem daqui está ligado às infraestruturas? Infraestruturas urbanas, desde de comunicações, qualquer operador de infraestruturas. Há aqui alguém? Levanta o dedo. Eu vou levantar o braço porque eu trabalho nessa área, de qualquer maneira. Ninguém? Isto demonstra um pouco também a importância dos eventos das Smart Cities. Neste palco, hoje, estão provavelmente 3 grandes especialistas do melhor que há no mundo a nível de infraestruturas e de trabalhar infraestruturas e digitalizar e renovar infraestruturas dentro de uma cidade. E é sempre incrível que, se nós fizéssemos um evento onde dizíamos vamos falar com alguém, não vermos aqui ninguém do redes, não vemos ninguém dos 5G, não vemos ninguém que realmente trabalha nas infraestruturas. Enquanto os operadores das infraestruturas estiverem de costas viradas para os desafios das cidades, vai ser difícil construirmos um caminho em conjunto. Portanto, a grande parte e a grande missão que eu acho que é importante numa cidade não é só fazer eventos destes, é manter estes eventos. Mais tarde ou mais cedo, as infraestruturas vão perceber que se fala mais daqui em coisas que eles não sabem sequer o que é que deviam fazer nos seus próprios departamentos de inovação. Portanto, começando, eu vou ter que passar para português, foi só por enquanto o Rob partia os pratos. The idea here, of course, is to break everything. So, you're always ahead.
I started already.
But I think that the important part is that we do have a huge challenge regarding infrastructures in the cities. I'll give you an example. For example, we talk a lot about sustainability, but sustainability also requires an energy transition. Energy transition is a big challenge when we deal with infrastructures. Why? Because a few years ago, or 10 years ago, all the electricity was generated by these fossil-based plants that were burning carbon. And then you have all these transportations, miles and miles across countries, where you have the high tension, mid tension, and then it goes low tension, and then it's distributed in the cities. The cities usually were just this large consumer at the end of a supply chain. That goes with almost every infrastructure. Things have changed. A smart city is incorporating production into the cities. That means that infrastructure, like the electrical ones, now needs to be different because you can produce energy on your rooftop. And when you produce energy on your rooftop, you probably want to share the excess of energy that you produce. You may want to sell or share to your neighbors. And sometimes you just buy to your neighbor, sometimes you just produce, and sometimes you just buy to this electric company from the DSO. This mind shift has a lot to do on the infrastructure. It's no longer one way, it's multiple ways. And it's not only one supplier and one buyer, it's multiple buyers. So we need to focus on having not only infrastructure, but also the digitizations of infrastructure. And not less than that, we also need to focus on, when you're talking about digitization, then we're moving to another big game changer, 5G. 5G is another infrastructure. In London, for example, the catapult said, smart cities will start now because of 5G. Forget the past. Now it's a different ballgame. And we do need to see that everything like this lands on cities. And then we have problems. One of the problems that I remind is we always have the silos, right? And the reason why I'm saying this is because we have Kiran here. She has a huge, long experience on dealing with infrastructures. She worked for the minister in UK. And she also had a huge conversation part, but main problem, of course, when you deal with the ministers, when you deal with these kinds of high level in the country, is that, of course, you have the silos. So, Karen, I will start with you. Sorry, guys, ladies first, and you broke all the glasses. So, Karen, I'll start ask you exactly like that. Give us just a short overview of your career and working on infrastructures, and also the importance of connecting the silos. I would say breaking the silos, but that will go for the glass. So that was a bit of breaking. So let's just connect because it's smoothest, and also the standards and everything, which the British standards are always very keen of.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Kiran Bogotra, and I'm currently the founder and CEO of ProtectBox, which is an artificial intelligence powered marketplace. So think booking.com plus Experian. But before I talk about ProtectBox, as Jorge very kindly mentioned, I've worked across infrastructure for almost 25 years. I started off originally in investment banking, Chase Manhattan, JP Morgan, Cazenove. And at Cazenove, I set up their bond advisory service. So the debt, bonds which are debts, which are sort of an extension of loans for companies. Cazenove had a very big advisory service across the emerging markets. So China, India, a lot of the Middle East. The banks that I worked for, we helped them raise the debt in the financial markets that set up a lot of the oil production facilities across the Middle East, railway systems in China. In India, I raised a fund through the private equity fund, 3i, that was a spin-off of the UK government. And it was the very first Indian infrastructure fund that the Indian government licensed. Not just the first one that it licensed outside of India. So 3i is a UK private equity company, but it was also the very first infrastructure fund for India that it licensed. And that built they call them like the cross, like the north to south roads, east to west roads, the major airports now that we all fly into. That was about, we're now going sort of 15 years ago. So that was one of the very first, where we talked to private equity LP buyout, like buyout LPs. So the Singapore Investment Authority, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, the Aramcos, the high net worths of the world, who would normally only invest in really quite high quality infrastructure, 10%, 15% returns. We convinced them to invest in sort of mezzanine, 20 to 40% infrastructure returns. that has now become, I think that's on its third or fourth fund, which is into the tens of the billions now. And it's no longer seen as a risky form of asset. So that's a very interesting thing that I've seen happen over my career. Then as I consulted, I've raised funds for South African mining companies, for Dutch smelting companies, again, all infrastructure based, not just the property, but the assets as well. And then I ended up in the Cabinet Office, which is sort of kind of like the Prime Minister's office. But I also worked in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, which is sort of like the Ministry of External Affairs over here. And I did a number of projects for the US State Department as well, which is kind of like the Internal Affairs Department for the US. And those were, for the UK government, we did a review of all of the critical national infrastructure. So everything that is infrastructure-based, but that is critical to the running of the country. We worked very closely with the Dutch government. My role in particular in terms of the silos was that the Cabinet Office is like an incubator within government. Foreign Office is one of the departments, but we had the Energy Department, the Telecoms Department, the Water Department, the Environmental Department. All of them had the information on what CNI we have in the UK. And I did the first, it was commissioned by the Prime Minister David Cameron, and it was called the Letwin Review. And it started, and we looked at flooding defences initially. So we mapped, over the course of 6 months, we mapped all of the flooding defences around the UK. And the very interesting bit about it, which is very relevant to here in Portugal, was that the flooding defences were part owned by private operators, so sort of utilities companies, energy companies, as well as the government. So mapping them really required a big public-private initiative, and the gathering of that data was a task in itself, but then to map it. And then the other thing that we did, again, a lot of expertise gained from the Dutch in this, is that there was a lot of interdependent services like electricity, like telecoms, not just mini-grid system, but oil provision, gas provision, that all sat behind flood defences. So we had to map those, look at the interdependencies between those, and then we also worked out if we were to repair or extend or make those defences resilient, what was the best science-based evaluation process to take into account with everything that was happening with climate change. And we looked at 10-year, 20-year, and 50-year resilience. And I was saying to Jorge yesterday, the thing that I found most fascinating, there was actually very little difference between 20-year resilience and 50-year resilience in terms of cost, in terms of keeping the flood defences resilient, which I was very surprised about. So I did that review, and then I worked for the government in cybersecurity. My team managed all of the bilateral and multilateral relationships for the UK government on cybersecurity. So I don't know what possessed them, but they used to send me out as the UK's expert on cybersecurity. They didn't allow me to wear dresses like this or earrings like this then.
We will get to cybersecurity before. I'm just interested in that part of the funding part, because it's always a big topic. 2 years ago, I think you were with me in that event. I was in an event and in the Middle East, and one person that was the minister from Oman, in the same panel, he just said, George, the question is not infrastructure, what is the best infrastructure, what is smarter infrastructure. The question is the business model. What is the smartest business model to fund and to maintain, and probably to split the business model? Because fact is, in Europe, for example, according to the European Bank of Investment, we are running short on 53 billion every year just to meet the targets, the climate targets for 2030. So we need extra, not from budgets, not from European or any government, but we need to have those kinds of extras. This means new business models, this means innovation, this means another level of management, and also on transforming our infrastructures. Funding is good, but it's also, we could kind of enlarge the scope also to have a co-investment and a co-creation. And that's Rob. I was in the wrong panel that day. Rob is always, everybody knows Rob, so you have everybody still talks about your presentation yesterday. I'm not going to deep dive the SWOT, a simple waste of time thing, but to not waste of time, I mean, that's the important thing about smart cities now. We need to have a design approach of a new models, of a new business models, right? So what's main the take? Because the Dutch and the private sector are the best friends and very successful doing this.
Well, first of all, I don't know if I agree with this Minister of Oman, but that's first. We can agree
I
to
gave you
disagree.
your card, by the way. Yeah?
No, but of course we need a lot of money. It's strange because we spend a lot of money. There's so much CO2 emission that we need a lot of money to get rid of the CO2 emission. That doesn't make a lot of sense in my opinion. If you see that the 10% of the rich people are responsible for 51% of CO2 emission, maybe the problem is with the people who have money. And those people who have money, they sit in the governments or lead big companies. And they talk about, it's all about less CO2 emission, then they are going to build up plans to make sure there will be less, but they need money for it. But they have the money, they spend the money, so they are responsible for 51% of the CO2 emission. So the problem is maybe with the people leading the companies, leading governments, having a lot of money and spending it in the wrong way. So maybe they should first of all look to themselves. I think that would be a good case. Second of all, if you think about, I think, but that comes down to the point I made yesterday, needing a lot of money is for investing in plans they already have. And the question is whether or not these plans make sense to the future, because did they really look to the future, to the things that are really going to hit her? And did they, what I then normally would say, have they built up the right key learning indicators? So what do we need to learn towards the future instead of, well, we need money, this is my plan, it's my thinking, it's my fixed way of thinking, that the dominant logic of the past is still in the plans they are building. So the way the problem was created, in the same way of thinking, we think we can solve the problem, and I think that's not possible.
But what about learnings? Because we still do the same way, right? So have we ever learned that if ever you have the table negotiations and people is not there, then if they are not in the meeting, if they are not in the table, they are on the menu, right? Have we ever learned that?
I don't really understand the question, to be honest.
Why people still are so much part of the solution and integrating the solution, or at least integrating discussion around the solutions? Because infrastructure deals with everyone.
Yeah, they deal with everyone, but sometimes they don't understand that their fixed way of thinking is part of the problem. If I look to infrastructure in the Netherlands, like I stated yesterday, if the street I live in is 20 meters wide, and 2 and 2 meters are for me, kids and people to walk on, 2 and 2 meters are for cars to park, and we have 12 meters left for cars to drive. So if I would build my house based on the specification of the infrastructure in the Netherlands in my street, my house would have a garage of 80% of my house would be a garage. That's pretty stupid. Nobody, and we all accept it as normal because we don't think about it anymore. In my city, hometown city Eindhoven, we have 2.2 million square meters of parking space. Can you imagine what you could do with 2.2 million public space? What you could do with it? That's amazing. What you and this is not driving. This is just parking. 2.2 million square meters. That's for each inhabitant of Eindhoven. That's 9 square meters. So that's silly, but nobody talks about this system. And when you ask people, what would you rather look if I'm in my house? If I look outside of my window? Would you love to see cars? No, of course not. I think cars are ugly, so I don't care about cars. I'd rather have green, but we don't have the green because we really need to change our habits. And the way of changing our habits, that's difficult. And in the most plans I see, it's still the fixed way of thinking is building more and more efficiency. In the fixed way we build up cities, design cities. So we need to redesign, reimagine cities instead of thinking, well, we are part of the problem. I think most people who are part of the problem, they cannot solve the problem. And like I said yesterday, you need to be aware of experts because they are often the biggest barriers to the future. So I think we need different kind of thinking. Look to ecosystems in biology, how they... The great thing about in nature ecosystem is that it doesn't need to grow, it stabilizes. And we as human species, we interrupt this ecosystem. We think we can solve it, but if we keep growing, more and more people spending more, it's almost impossible.
Can I make a quick comment? I think we're obviously sitting here in Europe, in the West, and we talk very much around habits and fragmentation and convenience. A lot of our behavior is driven by convenience. The further out you go to the places where climate change is really beginning to hit, Singapore has money, Malaysia has money, Bangkok is going to be submerged fairly soon. For them, it's a real, they're feeling it right now. So they're deploying the money, they're changing their habits, they're redesigning everything because it is happening to them straight away. Some of the flooded, like the coastal villages in the UK, are looking at some of those same things. So until we feel the urgency, and the urgency is more important than the convenience, right now everybody goes after the convenience.
Yeah, we are steering towards icebergs, like the Titanic did. And we don't change course, we just think, oh, we can move it around, or maybe it will melt on time with it will, because climate is changing. So they think there are no icebergs, but there are a lot of icebergs we might hit. And I totally agree, we only change our habit if it's right in front of my face. And the strange thing is, because of flooding, we are now going to build dikes, like the Dutch did, building a lot of dikes. That's not solving the problem because the water will rise. So it's just a temporary solution. And I think most money we just talked about is about building dikes and keeping away the danger.
True.
But you cannot keep away the danger. You should solve the reason why it's happening. And we are now just building dikes, and that doesn't make sense to me.
True, but one, just to keep short, go back a little bit about when you mentioned the example of mobility, and also we do have another person here which is pretty expert on that.
The guru.
And the guru on that.
Oh, but if I'm a guru, I'm an expert, then you should stop listening to me. That's what he just said.
Shut up.
That was my call. So, but there is a difference, by the way, about the expertise and things. People like Boyd, which is not the only one on the stage, that you started as an expert on smart cities, and the smart cities wheel is still a reference, even you hated about it, right? But that's another story. But the funny thing is, people like you just pretty much stop acting like an expert and consultants. You really, it's not storytelling. You are doing it. You are moving it. You are putting all your chips, all your bank accounts on a mission. And it's more than a business, it's more than a mobility. And this is happening now with some generations of the first initial people that started working and dealing with smart cities. Most of these people are now trying to get a new, different approach into the business. And by doing this, you are a pretty good example. You're not selling services to mayors. You're not being an advisor on mobility. What you're trying to do is just making a Web 3.0 on mobility. That means people, right? That means empowering people, bringing people to the game, right? So my question is simple. There is another infrastructure in your business, which is the people. That's the soft infrastructures part. Right, to co-engagement and making people part of the ecosystem. How is it going? How is it really happening? How easy, how fast are we evolving to Web 3.0?
Yeah, there's a few sort of embedded questions there regarding people and blockchain and everything else. I think one thing that was discussed already is like, accelerating change requires recognizing there's a problem and being aware of it and having a desire to make that change. And, Wheelcoin in particular was born with this idea that we need to make climate action fun. and engaging and rewarding, because we keep seeing the icebergs and the floods and the storms, and we keep talking about tons of CO2 that need to stop. We need to get to 1.5 degrees maximum to avoid calamity. But like, what can you and I do? What can she do? What can he do? What can my family do? And it feels like for so many people, it's this super abstract thing around climate change. And, you know, like 10 years, my first book was called Climate Capitalism. It came out in 2011. Back then, people thought I was crazy because I was literally talking about how could you reorient our economy to address climate change and actually win-win, so that the outcome is good for everybody, including business and governments, etc. That was more than 10 years ago. But the thing is, like, people are intimidated. Like, back then, nobody really got it. The average citizen didn't even believe climate change was real. I think now you probably have, I don't know, 75% of the world population realize the science is real because they can see it in their face right now, and so it's obvious that there's a problem. But then you're like, well, are we going to just scare people and like make them panic, or are we going to give them some tools to live a different life and feel part of the solution, but something they can engage with? And that's what Wheelcoin was born to do, to like help engage people around the world on the low carbon journey in a way that's very accessible to anyone, anywhere in the world. We have people using Wheelcoin in 140 countries around the world, and we don't even spend any money on marketing at all. They're just learning about the app, they're downloading it, they're getting rewarded for moving green. And, you know, there's a part of inclusivity around Wheelcoin, because when you earn Wheelcoin for free, you can get discounts on green mobility services or even public transit, which means, like, for lower income people in countries very much affected by transport, by climate change, they have a path to be part of the solution by living their daily life the way they often do in mass transit, and be rewarded with these Wheelcoin, which they could sell or use for discounts. So I think that's part of like the discussion around engaging people in this journey is, yeah, we've scared them a lot with climate change now. Yeah, they know we have to change, but what can they do? And I think we need more of these kinds of tools. What can you as an average person on the street, family, whatever, do? So that's a big thing. On your second question on blockchain is still very early. You know, it was really emerged in the world about 10 years ago with Bitcoin. You know, it's like every emerging innovation or technology has early adopters. It also has a lot of early scammers and fraudsters. Every industry, any industry, whether it's banking or energy, whatever, there's always people coming up with fraudulent ways to make money off of people. And so blockchain gets a bad name because there's a handful of really bad actors in blockchain, but anywhere there's big money to be made, there's bad actors. You can't avoid it. It just exists. But the majority of the blockchain community is very focused on leveraging blockchain to build decentralized solutions that change our economic model and bring to the world new solutions that empower users in different ways. And one thing, there's a particular part of blockchain I'm super excited about, and I would encourage all of you to look at. If you want to study anything in blockchain right now, I would study something we call refi, which is regenerative finance. And regenerative finance is the idea of, can you embrace regenerative economics, which is this idea of rethinking our economic model, kind of what Rob's talking about. Like, instead of like more efficient, optimal ways of enabling traffic to flow in a city, why don't we rethink our economy from an ecological perspective and embed negative externalities in our economy and rethink our infrastructure in a new way where we can live in harmony with the earth? That's what regenerative economics is about. Regenerative finance, or refi, is about how can you embrace those principles and leverage blockchain to do it, and leverage tokens as an incentive scheme, and tokenize land and water and other ecosystem services, so that we start to factor in the negative externalities of our economy and reorient, like we're doing with Wheelcoin, is a tokenized model to incentivize different behavior. We're basically tokenizing green mobility, a unit of green mobility. Well, we should be tokenizing everything and incentivizing everything that moves people in a more sustainable way. So refi is something I'm very passionate about, and it's a space that's really growing in blockchain.
Well, we do have some kind of other examples. For example, still on energy, because I'm pushing from my backyard. We do have the energy communities, for example. Now it's possible that you produce energy in your house. right? It's possible even that if you get together with your neighbors and you, for example, buy some batteries together and make a kind of a community and just share the batteries that your solar roof produces, you can be almost autonomous of that. Right? Problem there is, of course, infrastructure again. And then it looks nice because people get together. It's happening now that this in Portugal. People get together. They want to hold the discussions about, can we help each other? Can we share? Because I'm hardly home at the afternoon and we have these heat waves and lots of protection. Why don't we share? Right? That's a common ground. But then we need to go back again to the cities and say, yeah, but we don't have infrastructure for this. It doesn't work. We don't have a microgrid and it's not smart. And even if we have a power ledger, which is a blockchain for this, it doesn't work because we don't count. We don't know which one is moving from back and forward. So we need again to go back and say, the world could be much easier, but we still lack of foundations, right? So one point there is important, is again the security of all this data. People want to cooperate, but they need lack of a data infrastructure and also a physical infrastructure, right? And again, it comes the rights. I mean, we are together in our neighborhood, but then the data needs to be in some kind of infrastructure, and we need to have a security. Otherwise, someone is stealing energy from us, and it doesn't need to be someone from blockchain. This can happen. So who should hold the responsibility to create the infrastructures for people to co-create and to cooperate? That's the main question for you, Kiran.
So I would say not just who owns and co-creates that infrastructure. The other point, and this links in with some of what Boyd has said, and I'm not being antagonistic. There is a reason why I'm saying this, is that you've also, when you've worked in infrastructure over the years, what you see is the longevity. So whichever infrastructure you build now has to remain beyond the next 20 odd years.
Can it?
So this is what I'm trying. So I wrote an article in Wired a few years back about quantum and how blockchain is going to be destroyed by quantum. So some of the work that I did when I was in the Foreign Office in cybersecurity was that there are quantum computers out there that can break RSA encryption. So RSA encryption is what defines our passwords. So passwords can very easily be hacked. And through I wrote the artificial intelligence for Protect Box. The AI, the mathematical models that define blockchain, within about the next 10 years when quantum computers are available, they will break these decentralized systems. There's a few blockchain systems available now, places like Switzerland, that are quantum-proofed blockchain. So apart from the malicious actors, there's also the viability of this longer term. Cybersecurity as we have it now, which is defined by RSA, is already obsolete. One of the other things that we're working on, and it's being done out of the UK, it's out of the UK, it's funded by billions, it's called Digital Security by Design. And they're working with the likes of ARM and NVIDIA, all the big semiconductors. So even the next version, our next chip, you know, the chips that drive our phones, our laptops, within about 5 to 10 years, there is going to be a new commercial model for that, which is the Morello board. So if you're starting to build at the point of that, is you've got digital security by design, you've got quantum coming up, all within the next 10 to 20 years. All of that has got to be built into whatever grid systems you build now. You've got 5G being spread out around the world. If you look at some of the 5G installations that are going on, like in the UK, they're already starting to retrofit 5G fiber cables with quantum cables. Because what you don't want to be doing in 10 years' time when quantum is commercialized, having to lay it all down again. How much more is that going to cost? You're seeing the same sort of thing in places like Singapore. I think it was the telecom company 3. They're looking very much at if we put all this 5G cables that we're putting down, eventually, because of quantum communicates through satellite systems. So can we link up the 5G now through the satellite system so that we have an infrastructure that is not just one generation, but 2 generations and 3 generations proof, and we think about the funding for that, plus the climate funding that will then have to go on top of that. Hydrogen batteries is another one. Hydrogen fuel, hydrogen batteries, those are going to make normal batteries obsolete, and they will become commoditized and commercially viable. You're going to have to factor the retrofitting of all of that in. So that is what I would say is the tricky thing about it. And I would say, as much as the people, to power people and power the grids that you build, whether you build them at a micro grid level or you build them at a macro grid level, the real way that you get, I call it interoperability. The only way you break down silos, whether those are silos of people or silos of data, is that you have structures that sit in the middle that allow all of them to interoperate. You don't need one infrastructure to do that. The legal liabilities of holding that data are just impossible. The UK did a review, the Shakespeare review, which it did with a lot of different other governments. Nobody wanted to, there's no insurer that would insure the database that you could build. And I'm not trying to plug ProtectBox, but one of the ways we've got around that is our interoperability comes through APIs, but what we do is we allow the data to sit in cloud providers or locally. Because things like GDPR, data security, you need that data to sit in the country. Even Portugal, to a large degree, wants its customers' data to sit here. So you let it sit in the cloud providers, who are also some of the biggest emitters, are a form of infrastructure that can power that. They can hold the data, but they can allow the consumer to make that data available so it can be sent at a local government level, regional government level, internationally. And then you can take existing lots of different grids and plug them together so you have interoperable systems. And those could be built by government, those could be built by founders, innovators like us. If you look at places like the Southeast Asia, they are doing it they're getting innovators, they're giving them challenges, and then they are funding a lot of it. But there'll be conglomerates, state-owned conglomerates that will be running it. So they almost function as that public-private entity. That's one model. The UK is another model. But then you still have to have a standard or a regulation that ensures standardization across the world. Because you don't want different people doing lots of different, because then you can't have the interoperability.
That's one way, because we do have in the European Union, we did have a huge experience. Back in 2019, we made this Green Deal, right? So we will be the first continent neutral in carbon footprint, right? So there was a lot of money, a lot of support. Every member state, like Portugal, for example, but everyone, need to create their energy transition plans to be more sustainable and get rid of this old fossil base, and that includes infrastructures as well. What happened is, 3 years later, European Union looked at the problem and says, we're going too slow. Now, it's not just a question of funding, it's a question that it's not just decarbonizing our infrastructures, but we need to have a different level of culture. So 3 years later, they decided this is above all a cultural issue. So that's why we started funding, the European Union started launching a few movements like the new European Bauhaus or the next Renaissance. Because we need to tackle a culture, we need to create a new cultural movement to influence the next generation. Because it's not just trying to change the source, is trying to change the other infrastructure, which is users, which now are prosumers. So users do have more power now. And by the way, why should a person just be a consumer if they have the ability to do it and to share data and be part of the game? So these kind of cultural movements now are pretty much the solution. Even European Union found it as a solution or as the means to get there. Is this a kind of retaking the decision making, spreading out from taking, because otherwise we are continuing to have investing on the rich ones. So will cultural be the game changer to make it more inclusive and different type of society that will drive a new level of economy?
I think no. The problem is with all the innovations innovation in itself is using a lot of energy, and it's making us using even more energy. Most people don't know that if you say to Siri, look this up or put on the lamp, that there's data going from your Siri back to a data center, needs to something. You could switch on a lamp for 1 hour instead of giving, it's about 1 hour of energy if you ask Siri or Alexa or which other device to switch on your lamps. So we want to have a more easy life, and most consumers don't know that if they give a command to Siri, oh, what will be the weather in Porto this afternoon, that uses a lot of data. So we are getting addicted to a lot of new technology that makes our life more efficient. That creates a problem that the intake of energy we need is growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think it's too easy to say, oh, well, we let this problem rest with the consumers or the prosumers or whatever we call them. It's too easy. That won't work, because all these big tech companies, they want to make a lot of money. And by making a lot of money, they do a lot of innovation. And innovation soaks up, from a consuming point of view, a lot of energy. So all the apps, everything we use, it consumes, it's data, 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 data. If someone once told me, I didn't check this data, if you send one email to a person, that's around 8 minutes of a lamp glowing for you, 8 minutes. So if you send an email to someone with 10 people in the CC, that's around 66 minutes of making sure there's light in your house.
So what's the solution? Going off green?
The solution is we cannot solve this problem by saying to consumers, it's your thing to be done. We need to restrict maybe certain sectors for making a life more efficient by using a lot of energy. And of course, the hydrogen battery, that will... But what I like in your example is that people in a neighborhood, they want to make sure they get energy by themselves, but they're using a lot of batteries. We don't know what to do with these batteries in 10 or 20 years from now. We are soaking up so much materials that there will be... I think there might be a big world war coming based on Antarctica. The things are melting. There are a lot of materials on the ground of Antarctica. We need to build all these semiconductors, all these chips and silicium, and everything is in the bottom of Antarctica. Antarctica is not now owned by one country, but pretty much sure that the US, the EU, China, India, all the big countries are after all these materials in Antarctica. It's driving us towards a world collision because we need more energy, more energy, more energy, and nobody thinking in the long term about what to do with Antarctica, where all the materials are. We are exploring space maybe we find materials on the moon or whatever. So we are exploring space. We want to go to Mars, and I think I will kill myself after walking for 1 week on Mars, because it looks pretty boring. We have a beautiful Earth, and we are going to Mars while not saving this Earth. I would definitely kill myself after 1 week walking on Mars.
Before you kill yourself, let me tell you
Okay, I won't do it now.
No, please don't. I couldn't live with myself if I was on this panel and I didn't have an intervention. So one of the things that we're working with, and this is cloud providers, data centers out in the Southeast Asia, who are some of the biggest generators. They're not the Amazons or the Oracles. These are like the Alibaba clouds, the Google clouds, FPT, Viettel, because that's where the data sits. They are looking not just at offsetting, they are actually looking at optimizing the emissions from their data centers and almost recycling and regenerating the energy that they're using, whether it's in terms of how it's located, how they're heating it. It's some of the most advanced stuff I've seen around data centers and just reducing not just the emissions of it, but what they're also looking at doing and this is one of the applications we're talking to them about, is how they can then allow their supply chain, so all of their customers and their users, to also benefit from the emissions reductions that they're looking to do. That is not even being thought about or talked about or even considered over here in Europe. It's known in the US, but it would take a huge amount, or it's very difficult for the US to do it, because if you look at the DNS and the data centers and where they're located, they're in such public places, it's very difficult for them to retrofit in the US. But a lot of that thinking is coming out of there, and I'm sure we'll see the benefit of that here in Europe in about 5 years' time. So rest assured. Please.
Rest assured, so I'll stay alive then.
You don't need to go to Mars in the next 5 years.
No, but the problem is into what's long-term thinking. Most politicians and government think in a term of 4 years. They are incapable of thinking in 20 or 30 years from now. But we need to think in 20, 30, 50 years from now. Like Antarctica will be a big problem.
And that's a cultural movement, right?
That is some sort of a cultural movement, but we cannot say it's up to you. It's too easy. Like a lot of generations say, oh, we'll maybe the next generation will take care of it, and then, oh, then I can do. Oh, I don't need to do anything anymore. It's not up to the next generation. It's up to us acting.
True, but the point—that's the point. How can we engage? How can if you don't have traction, you don't really have any movement, right? It's just have a walk.
But like these big IT companies who have a big impact on this world from an energy point of view, the IT sector is using a lot of, and we all are used to it. I think they need to think also, there need to be regulation that the innovations you have cannot lead to using more energy if it's from an energy perspective.
Okay, so that brings me a tough question, right? Because you are working on the behavior change, right? So you are providing technology and the tools for people get a new perception about energy. But blockchain does consume a lot of energy. So how come we are doing? We are walking. What are we talking or walking the sustainability? Because it's
so. Bitcoin mining is very energy intensive. It's a type, I don't want to get too technical, but it's a type of consensus mechanism that's called proof of work. And for Bitcoin to work as a blockchain, it requires massive computational power from these massive facilities around the world. Proof of work, while it is very energy intensive, it's worth mentioning that that industry, the Bitcoin mining industry, because they've been under pressure, has been one of the most advanced of any industry in the world in terms of embracing renewable energies. They're often co-locating on oil fields to capture methane as their primary energy source. So they're actually contributing to solutions. But I'm not here to defend Bitcoin mining, even though I think, you know, when you look at the data and the actual evolution of that industry, you actually realize it's not the way people think it is. But the rest of blockchain is what's called a proof of stake mechanism for consensus, and it is not energy intensive. And in fact, Wheelcoin is deployed on a blockchain that's called Celo, C-E-L-O, and they are a world leader in what I spoke about earlier, regenerative finance, so refi. So they were born on Earth Day. Their main net launched on Earth Day 2020. They're extremely focused on climate. Many projects like ours have deployed on them because they're by default carbon negative. So there's a lot of misunderstanding around blockchain and what its impacts are on climate. And energy consumption, but the short answer is Bitcoin is very energy intensive. However, a lot of that activity around mining is actually based on renewables, and they're capturing waste heat and various other things. And almost the rest of the blockchain ecosystems around the world are based on proof of stake, which is very low energy consumption. And some, like Celo, are actually carbon negative.
And what about the other side of the coin, the benefits of behavior change? How is it working? Do you feel that you're grabbing more and more users, gaining traction, not just for an application, but traction to a new sense of participation on the project? Because that's the whole game, right?
Right. So I have two answers to that. One is We asked our users, so over time we'll have better data to compare individual users before and after using Wheelcoin, but we did ask our users in a poll fairly recently, and more than 20% of our users said they have actively made changes to their mobility patterns because of Wheelcoin. It's making them aware. It's like all of you who are in the, you know this very well because you're in the energy space, but smart meters, and how just implementing a smart meter makes people aware, and it roughly relates to a 20% impact on people's behavior because they finally have information that they see on a regular basis and it impacts their understanding of their impact. But outside of that 20% example from users, we've had some anecdotal things that have been very interesting, like when we launched this digital collectibles program, which might sound silly to a lot of you, people, just like Pokemon Go and everything else, people like to collect things. And if you make it fun and engaging and rewarding to collect things, you want to collect them. And so we got people addicted to the digital collectibles, and we have people writing us saying they want new ways to be able to earn more Wheelcoin because they've spent all their Wheelcoin trying to get all the collectibles. And because it's random in terms of how you get them, you end up getting a lot of duplicates, but you don't get all of them. And we made 20 out of the 100. So for each city, we have one rare collectible that's gold. It's different, and you kind of want it because it's hard to get, right? And we've had people blow all of their Wheelcoin for this purpose, trying to get those. And you, like I have spent 500 Wheelcoin trying to get 100 collectibles, and so far I have 93%. I'm missing 7. All 7 I'm missing are gold. Now that the collectibles are on chain, I can go buy the gold ones from people who have extra ones. So that's how I'll solve my own personal need to get to 100. Plus, I move green. I also move greener because of Wheelcoin, because it's like I feel like, not just because I'm the CEO of the company, but because I want to earn more Wheelcoin too. So it's working.
You're addicted in Wheelcoins, aren't you? So is this a case of a collective learning system that by empowering, by gamifying it, or not really? We don't really have any, and it's not, we're not getting there as a collective intelligence, and we do need a collective intelligence, right? So what is the pathway, in your opinion, to get a collective intelligence that's going to make a difference for a better world?
That's a big question.
Yeah, I know, because I'm going to make big questions. You take time, because then Victor will kill me before the time, but that's okay.
Then at least, then you are.
Then I'm dying, not you, yeah.
I think we need collective learning. That's the point I try to make in the new book and in the keynotes I give, that we need to build an intelligence system. It's not about knowledge anymore, it's about intelligence, and it's about finding the right questions, and that's really difficult. Especially if you ask questions, you're actually challenging the dominant logic. And if you challenge the dominant logic, the people having the power leading this dominant logic won't like you. So I think we need more people who don't mind to not be liked by the. We need more. We need more revolts. We need more different stories.
People are always used to provide solutions and ask for solutions.
Yeah, but
right. So we have a problem. We expect someone to bring the solution for me to implement.
Yeah, but no one can solve the climate problem. That's too big. You need to decipher what's the basis of this, what are the parameters on which you can change, and what are the questions we need to ask there to change their dominant way of logic. Learning. Because we are used to growing. Everything, like I said yesterday, everything needs to grow. But growth for growth's sake is the ideology of the cancer cell. It will destroy us. So we need different kind of ways of thinking. But when people are, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with young or old. We need different minds need to be connected, and not in a digital way, because that soaks up a lot of energy. No, that's just a joke. But we need minds to be collected to. It's not saying you need to change, because people who say you need to change are the ones probably not changing, because most people who say you need to change, they say become like me. That's a bit arrogant. That's why I dislike people who say you need to change. But we need different kind of thinking to challenge this dominant logic, and it's starting to happen. Finally, more people are thinking about, is capitalism the right way? Is it the way we democratize? Is that a good word? Democratize everything? Is that a good way? So things are changing. We are getting more. There is more challenging of the status quo, but.
Can I give you an example?
Yeah, please do.
So we received Innovate UK government funding. This was right at the start of COVID. It's part of their Sustainable Innovation Fund to build into our cybersecurity marketplace a net zero score. So like you have 5 stars, we do 5 trees. So for all the millions of cybersecurity products around the world, we're the only ones who've gone out and tracked scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions for all of them. And then we've coded into our AI science-based targets, the SBTIs, because 3 years ago that's all that was there. And we're working with the British Standards Institute to upgrade that to BSIs, to the ISO net zero guidelines. And what we found, so we're not a reward program or an incentivization program, which I think is, I was fascinated hearing about Wheelcoin. We're a carbon footprint for the person that, not the product that you're buying, but the seller that you're buying from. And you can, like if you're buying a flight on Kayak, you can pick your products based on different ratings. When you buy a package of cybersecurity from us, you can pick based on which one has more trees. So if it's got 3 trees, 5 trees is that they're net zero. And not only can you pick the package that's the most sustainable, you can then also offset and remove for the bit that they haven't done. So like you do with flights, right? You buy the but we go beyond offset, because ISO net zero doesn't see offsetting as truly sustainable. So we even allow removing, not just tree planting and more. And the thing that we get asked, and we see people more and more, they will buy the products that they think are more sustainable. So as a result of that, the sellers have started to give us more data, more of their scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. They come to us now and say, is this how I need this, how you want me to present this data, or how do you want me to present it? The thing that we're being asked by corporates and at sort of smart city government regional levels is, can you give the buyer the ability to tell the seller what they would like them to do to be more sustainable, or what if they could feed back to the seller something, can you build that mechanism in? And I said, yeah, very easily. So that's one of the bits of funding that we're looking at doing next, where as you're buying the products, like you would on an Amazon or something, Amazon have Climate Pledge. We're part of the Climate Pledge, and we're talking to them about, so the user can directly feedback to the seller. I know this about you. I've seen, on our 5 trees, you can drill right down, and it will show public data and data that we've taken off the net. So the user can the buyer can make a decision at that point and say, do you know what? If you did this, more of this, I would buy more from you. And that feeds right back to the buyer. So that sort of work is, we've been nominated for the Earthshot Prize.
But that's a common example of kind of co-creation from corporate and their consumers or their customers.
But we couldn't build that without the data. If that wasn't digitized and we didn't have that data feedback loop, there was no way we could collect that at the scale that we can collect it. And because we've trained it into the artificial intelligence, it's being updated real time.
I'll get there to the artificial intelligence. I'm curious about the Wheelcoin for cities. Grabbing exactly the same example, can we in the near future know the behavior change in cities for the people by using the Wheelcoin and becoming more sustainable? Because is that another service level that we can have if a city adopts the wheel chain? Will a city know how we started and how far are our people getting a more collective intelligence of more sustainable or new behaviors, because that's the important part when we talk about the standard. Is everything is focused to key performance indicators to be better, to be more competitive. What about the behavior indicators? How we are changing our lifestyle to become more sustainable? Will a city be able to measure that if adopts the wheel coin for cities?
Yes, we have this dashboard tool that our company clients are using, and for cities, they can use it as well. And that's one of the reasons they're partnering with us, so that they can get the data about how their residents are moving, and you can see trends over time, leaderboards as well. And in fact, Santiago de Chile, which is one of our newest partners, they have a new citizen data program that's around creating an open data platform for citizens to be able to be more engaged in smart city related data and be able to do things with that data. So one of the things they're excited about Wheelcoin is it's a very engaging way for them to be in their early launch of this citizen data platform to get really kind of interesting data, because no offense to you in the energy space, but like, you know, an average citizen doesn't understand kilowatt hours and the data that might flow from that. But they can understand, because our data shows you what percentage of people this week versus last week walked versus biked versus took a train versus a car, etc. And they can all be part of the journey of trying to collectively reduce their emissions. I will say one more thing, because Rob talked about it earlier, and I agree with this, which is sometimes we want to put the blame on citizens or on consumers, and our whole economy is messed up. And our economic model is flawed around growth for growth's sake, around financial mechanisms only, around lack of reflection of negative externalities of our economic activity. So yes, citizens can play a role through things like Wheelcoin, but unless we get companies and governments to align on rebuilding our economy in a more sustainable way that reflects the negative externalities, which means a radical rethink of everything we do, not incremental improvements to how we're managing traffic flow. I mean, we could all criticize Saudi Arabia for good reasons, but, and we were talking about this yesterday or day before, the NEOM project in Saudi Arabia is fascinating. I've had a chance to go visit there recently this year, and talk about rethink how we build cities. That's what we're talking about. Can we, I don't mean incrementally improve something, can we dramatically rethink how we build buildings, how communities live, how they move? There won't be any vehicles in NEOM. They're not allowed. There's a line. It's called the line, and it has an embedded high-speed rail thing, and then this other thing that goes vertical if you need to go up and down, very green, etc. It's an experiment. There's a lot of flaws, don't get me wrong, but it's something fascinating to watch, because it's an experiment in how we might absolutely rethink how we build and live in cities, and therefore dramatically impact the carbon emissions that come from everything we do. So in the line, there's not much need for Wheelcoin, because you have no option but to move green, because it's the only thing available. So, you know, that's a radical rethink, I think, worth you know, looking at.
But rethinking our economic system, that means pretty much deleting most of our collective intelligence about economics, right? I mean, the GDP, for example, if GDP grows, if you have if you drop oil on the sea, because then you need to hire more companies to come up and clean it, and by hiring more companies to come up and cleaning, and other companies to advertise that the oil company actually is good for us, and all these new hires that you do from a disaster, that increases the GDP. So this is a typical case that we do have our concepts, which, by the way, they are taught in universities and everywhere. Our concepts and our collective intelligence is looking to the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right. So how can we fix that? That's your last call, by the way, because
well,
otherwise
the strange thing, if you produce a napalm bomb or a drone that kills people, you add to the GDP. And if you use them, it's not being added. It's nowhere. If you cut down all the trees and make chairs out of it, you add to the GDP, and no one talks about cutting the trees. So it's a strange system we have. And of course, we really need to change. I don't know how. The only thing I can do is kick it or try to... but we need new key learnings for the future. We need new, and that's the point I want to make. Why is Mother Earth not at the table? Why are next generations not at the table? I don't understand politicians or CEOs of companies who only think in the now and making money now, while they have kids and they know they are damaging their kids. The future of the kids they are damaging, and they don't care. They rather pay money out to their shareholders instead of embracing their kids and saying, you will have a good life in 30 years from now, based on the decisions I made. No, I need my bonus, and that's the problem. That's the real problem.
Completely true. Now, show me the sixth finger. Where is sixth finger trying to alert and to change the current?
We are hired in by companies who really want to explore long-term thinking. So we've got, I've got more examples, but Vitor is saying you don't have the time, so I don't have the time. I always listen to Vitor.
Show him the sixth finger.
I always listen to Vitor. Now, we are doing projects with real long-term thinking. So what we're saying to these companies, what you're doing now, how will this harm the future in 10, 20 years from now? How could this possibly harm? Let's look towards the future. What will be the scenarios that the future might look like in 10, 20 years from now? Which are the themes that will have a direct impact on the world? And then travel back. It's a backcasting process. So go towards the future, decipher how the future will look like in some scenarios. What is the scenarios you pick? We think these are the themes that will be driving society back then. Go back to now and say, what will be the role of innovation? What will be the role of our strategy towards the future if we think this is correct, what we predicted? Those are projects we drive, and we do it in the food, we do it in education system. We're now building a new education system because educating is also something strange. I think if there would once have been a brainstorm 1,000 years ago, how are we going to educate our kids? Well, we will place them in a room with maybe 120 square meters. We put 40 people in it. There's one person coming in front of that. He's telling or she is telling a story, goes out, and then they have learned. Probably everybody would have think that's a stupid idea, but that is where we educate. Yeah. So we are being hired by companies or government to bring in different kind of thinking. Do they always embrace it? No. But if 10% of that does, that will lead to a change. So that's what we are doing with Six Fingers.
Perfect. Kiran, if everything goes wrong, we have artificial intelligence, right?
Absolutely.
That's a new.
Absolutely.
That's the next foundation or the next infrastructure that you have to take in place, right?
That's your collective learning there, right there.
So very briefly, and that's the last call for everyone, and that's 1 minute for each. 1 minute for each. In 1 minute, what should be the best process to build a better world infrastructure?
Definitely it would have artificial intelligence in it. Absolutely. I don't know whether it would... I understand generative artificial intelligence. We're upgrading ours. That needs to be controlled and supervised. And you need China and you need Russia involved to do that, which is what we did for cybersecurity. I would say it would need to be 5G and satellite linked and absolutely 100% data driven. Data, and that's the fuel for the AI. That's your collective learning for the future. The energy cost of digital and IT is being reduced and can be reduced, and everything should be retrofitted as opposed to completely rethinking it. You just won't get uptake unless we move to Mars, in which case the rethinking will work there.
Boyd, before Mars, that's a lot for your mob. 1 minute, what should be the key foundation for a better future?
I think I can do it in 30 seconds. I've spoken about a few times, embedding negative externalities into our economic model so that the full cost of what we do is reflected in the price. And by doing that, we can align stakeholders around a total rethink of how we build our economy.
That was more than 30 seconds, by the way.
Okay, 45, sorry.
Rob, your call.
I'll try to do it even faster. We changed our way of elections. Make sure that kids from 10 on, they can vote. And the older you get, the less your vote counts. I think that would make sense.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
The reason why we need to close a little bit early is because Boyd Cohen will cycle to the airport. No,
With me on the back.
carrying Constantina and Rob. No, we are preparing the logistics. They need to take the plane. So basically, it was amazing conversation. George, thank you so much. You did pretty well, as usual. And of course, it will be your task was facilitated, very easy task with this kind of people that we bring to Famalicão. And thank you all to being here with us. And hopefully, we can continue to discuss for years and years and years. We shouldn't. What I mean is, hopefully we don't need to discuss for years and years and years. But always are the same questions: why we keep doing things so badly, so wrong? And let's be optimists. Some things are doing good also, and hopefully, this event is one example. We're just going to continue outside in Iagura after the lunch. For now, we ended this first part of the second day of Forum B-Smart. Thank you all. Obrigado a todos e bom almoço. E voltamos a falar lá fora, o Jorge, eu e mais um painel de convidados, ok? Obrigado.